be seated. Any apologies?
Mr Mayor, can I give apologies for Councillors David Hartley, who's with Ireland on an emergency, and Councillor Brian Newman, who unfortunately has had a bereavement in the family.
Apologies from Councillor Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I give apologies for Councillors Galea, Butterworth, Aslam and O'Connor.
Any declaration of interest? No. 15 minutes of the Council to approve of track record or otherwise the minutes of annual Council meeting held on 15th of May 2025 and extraordinary meeting held on 19th June 2025.
Can I move then, Mr Mayor?
Second, Mr Mayor.
All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 4, announcement from the Mayor and the Leader of the Council.
Mr Mayor, I just wanted to inform the Council that there have been continuing discussions about local government reorganisation. I'm awaiting during the meeting for Lawrence to brief me on the latest position, but there's quite a lot of meetings across the county with leaders of the 15 authorities to try and have a common position, although perhaps not common proposals in terms of local government reorganisation. And later on in the agenda, there is a motion where I will expand upon the range of possibilities that there may be. That's all I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Item 5, questions on notice from the public to the Leader? No, none. Item 6, questions on notice by the members to the Leader, a committee chairman or representative on any outside body on matters not otherwise in the agenda? No. Item 7, report by the Leader on the work of the Executive. Councillor Witt.
Mr Mayor, can I submit the report which went out with the agenda? Thank you.
Any questions? All those in favour? Item 8, report of the Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Mr Mayor, I submit the report.
Any questions? Yeah. Councillor Tennant? Seconding it. Yeah. All those in favour? Carried. Item 9, Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommendations for the Executive consideration, review of bulky household waste collection and replacement waste containers. Councillor Witt.
Mr Mayor, I'm very confused about this item. Discussing this with the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, it hasn't actually come from Overview and Scrutiny. And given that the decisions on these issues were made in February, I would submit that the 6-month rule applies and that we couldn't vary the decisions that we took in February as part of the budget meeting. Also, the wording of this is recommendations for the executive consideration. So I am completely and utterly confused as to why we have it here, and I would suggest that we just pass on to next business.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Mahmood.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just point of clarification. I think also as a council we made that decision back in February. I think it was the budget meeting. I think the issue here was not the principle that stands as it is. I think with this report, it's the what's kind of workable from operational services point of view. And I think it's more the practicality side of things. And I think that's what David, because I remember David contacting me as leader at the time saying what was being proposed it will be too much of the work and it's not workable, and this will be one of the solutions. So at the time I did ask him to bring a report to the council, and because obviously as a council we made that decision, so it has to be kind of decided by the council to move forward, and I think that's what that issue that's been clarified. So in my view, I would probably be happy to support option 3 on page 3, and also there's a charge for those items, and they're clearly laid out on page 2, so I'm happy to move it forward.
I'm actually proposing the first solution. Sorry, I do actually propose second the motion by the leader to under the 6-month rule and leave it at that. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to propose a second.
Mr. Mayor, before we do that, we have a ruling on what the council has proposed, some legal advice.
Well, Mr. I'm not clear exactly whether a specific item on these matters was decided in February. It was certainly decided in December. I'm kind of, without looking line by line at what's in the budget, I don't think I'm in a position to rule the item out. So I'm kind of ruling out, if you will. That'll be my advice to you, Mr. Mayor. So it's a matter for the council how they want to deal with it.
Councillor Coburn Price.
Yes, but it's one of those complex papers back here, because obviously it's a bit of a cry for help from David Walker to balance his budget, or do the best to cap the budget. I mean, it contains a lot of notes on the bottom of page 3 about the overruns on bulky waste costs. It doesn't tell you at the top of the back page there some of the significant overruns in terms of bin replacements and costs. These things are hugely financially impacting on our budget. And need some action taken to try to get some revenue for the council where it can collect it and it's due to it. We are providing a valuable service. If you want your lobby waste taken away, it's a fantastic service. I've used it. It's free. It's lovely. But I've also used it in other places. With my mother's house, for example, when emptying that out on the Fylde coast. It was a marvellous service. It cost me just over £100 to empty out a whole garage full of stuff. And that service was brilliant. So people think at the time, I know we had a debate last time over the link between charging and fly tipping. Or if we charge for bulky waste, there'll be fly tipping all over the place. But at the moment, we don't charge for bulky waste, and we are one of the worst fly tipping areas in the entire country. I think Philip Spur was amazed because he's never seen fly tipping where he came from. If you come to Pendle, then it's all over the place, and yet the service is free. So I think the idea of introducing a valuable service from the council and charging a fair and reasonable amount for that service is absolutely something that's a bit of a no-brainer, really. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee did discuss it. We were unanimous in its strength and its merits, and hence the recommendations we brought to council to consider. Obviously they were rejected then, and they were thrown out a bit of the budget as part of that section. But obviously the proposals here are there to try to help the council with its finances, and also to support David Walker initiatives on, as he says on the front here, about rehoming, reusing, all the recycling which he wants to do. We've got more and more bins than you can shake a stick at, and the ability to use those bins to do our waste initiatives is something that he needs support on. So I move what's in the paper. I don't know where we are in terms of moving and supporting any proposal, but I move the option to actually do something with this paper and to push it forward.
Councillor Iqbal.
Mr. Mayor, I think that what was discussed at the December Council meeting and then subsequently in February was around the reason that David Walker referred this back to Council is that the practicalities that were agreed in terms of the December meeting, the operational services can't deal with, or the system can't deal with it. So what he's proposed, I take on board what the leader has said. Maybe a possible course of action is that this is referred to the executive for their August meeting, and then it comes back on the 10th of September for the Council to consider.
Councillor Coburn Price.
Happy to second that.
In the past, talking about the distant past, a dozen years ago, I supported, because I felt sorry for people who had their bins stolen, and it didn't seem fair that somebody had taken a bin and that they'd have to pay a charge for it to be given. And also I was aware that there were places in Combe where perhaps people don't own their own cars, and it seemed a good thing in places like Waterside, my colleague's ward, Dorothy Ward, that people should be able to have some bulky waste taken away. However, I am chairman of the Climate Emergency Working Group, and David mentioned about his mother's garage. And what happens in Pendle is that if you've got an old sofa or an old bed or something like that, then you book it online, and the old sofa or the old bed or whatever the old thing is put outside, and then Dave Walker's team come along, and it could be hours or even a day before they come along and take away said item or items. And what tends to happen then is, it rains because it's Pendle, somebody's dog comes and perhaps wheeze on it, and it's not the pristine thing that it was when it left the house. It's been standing around waiting for David Walker's team. And at that point, it's definitely waste. It's definitely waste. When we emptied Christine's garage, it was full of things that had been lovingly conserved from her own father's house. And she couldn't bring herself to part with these things. And there were sets of crockery, there were old step ladders, there were sideboards, there were things, there were loads of things. And I often see Trish puts out appeals on Facebook for couples setting up houses, desperate parents, whatever, for these things. So it was a charity that came along on the field at an exact appointed time. And we took all the things from the garage, all new and dry and ready to go. And they put it on their lorry, and they said, these things are going to find a new life. These things are going to go to homes. They're not going to waste. So I've changed my view from a dozen years ago. I think it absolutely makes sense not only to be caring about Pendle's budget, because we are an outlier in Lancashire not charging for these things. These are not vast sums that we're asking for. We're not even asking for £100 like they do on the Fylde. They're not vast sums. They're needed for our budget. They are so needed. And yet, we can give these things that people are throwing out, old sofas, old beds, whatever they are, we can give them a new life. So from a green perspective, it's an absolute no-brainer. And we should be implementing these very, very modest charges and giving things a new life.
Councillor Dr. Lord.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as you all know, I represent one of the most deprived wards in Pendle, if not Lancashire. We can't afford to pay £100 to have mattresses moved and stuff like that. Garages, if you have a garage. It's just unthinkable, especially in my ward, and we have a lot of bulky waste, and some of it's just fly tipped, and I know last year they could hardly keep up with picking these items up. I don't want to see a charge, particularly in Waterside, I represent, where they will just, if they have to pay, when people are going to food banks and stuff like that, if they have to pay, they'll just dump it. They won't pay, they'll dump it because they can't afford to pay. They can't, if it's £20, that's £20 worth of shopping for some people. So I hope that you don't support this charge,
Mr Mayor. Councillor Iqbal made an eminently sensible suggestion that this is referred for consideration at the August executive, and I will accept that as a reasonable way forward.
Councillor Suckley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I too represent Waterside and Horsefield, and it is a real mixed bag of deprivation and not. And one of the great things that I see in this paper, I do support the introduction of the charges firstly, and to dispel the myths, Dorothy, it says a charge of £13.50, which I think is incredibly reasonable, and if you had to get a private contractor to do that, it would cost considerably more than £13.50. But then at item 2, that persons in receipt of housing or council tax benefits be eligible for a discount of 50%. So it's £6.75 to get rid of 4 items of bulky waste. So not only is it cheap, it's even cheaper. It's being subsidised again. Now, it can't get any worse. You know, if things are bad now and we're not charging, we might as well make some money and support the service and make the service better. So at least when we're dragging people out from David Walker's team to come and clear up, we're paying, you know, it is being paid for. This can't go on as it has. We need to make an intervention. I've stood up in this chamber before and talked about the 8,000 incidences of fly tipping across Pendle. That is disgraceful. And as I said, as my colleague said earlier, if that was the case that we were charging and we were still having the highest rates of fly tipping, then I think I might be in agreement. Let's give people a bit of a buy on the charge. Let's let's allay the charges for a short while and see if that makes a difference. Well, we haven't been charging. It's made no difference to the fly tipping. So let's introduce the charges, see what happens, and if the rates shot, I cannot see it being any worse than it already is, Dorothy, I'm afraid. So let's get on with it. Introduce the charges. Let's balance some budgets and get a better service in Pendle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we're actually going off topic. In the agenda it states, all View and Security Committee recommendations for the executive consideration. It's not down for consideration within this chamber today, Mr Mayor. And we got very hearty discussions of one occasion of actually accepting it. But from the agenda it states that we should be looking at recommending it goes back to the executive before it comes to the full council. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
We've gone up before from Councillor Iqbal and second Councillor Mahmood. All those in favour? Against?
Of course, to the August
Item 10, street trading and gambling policy.
Mr Mayor, can I propose the gambling policy? I appreciate that we tend to people in this chamber and beyond in Pendle who don't gamble, but a policy for those that do.
Do you have a seconder?
Second that.
Councillor Iqbal, all those in favour? Against? Item 11, climate change strategy for Pendle. Councillor Whip.
Again, Mr Mayor, can I recommend the amendments to the strategy as proposed?
Councillor Coburn-Price.
This has been an excellent strategy.
Oh, sorry, before you, do you have a seconder, Councillor Whip?
I can second it.
Oh, you want to go on.
This has been an excellent strategy because, as Yvonne will attest, we in the Climate Emergency Working Group have been beavering away on a series of disparate and sometimes not connected things. And we've been doing all kinds of things from composting in Trawden to tree planting to advice for warmer homes. And all of these things, while worthy, weren't necessarily part of a wider plan. And we took lots and lots of statistics every year, our climate scorecard, and how much carbon we've saved and how much our emissions have gone down. I have to say that our emissions have mainly gone down because of the decarbonisation of the national grid more than anything else. Plus we were helped by COVID, possibly the only time that anybody could have that as a sentence. So we are moving in the right direction. We have been moving in the right direction all along, but we haven't been doing it with sufficient focus. And what this plan gives us is that focus across all those disparate disparate pots, so that we're not just going forward in one place and not in another. It gives us tangible goals. And what was great about it was we put in our thoughts, we made it more pendly. When we got the first iteration, it was very generic. It could have been a climate plan for Wolverhampton, mention that because Wolverhampton seems to be scooping up lots of things. It could have been a climate plan for anywhere. And we made it more pendly and more focused on us. And it was great to see that the consultants who worked with our climate officer incorporated our comments, and where they didn't, they actually sent us a spreadsheet and explained why, which made perfect sense, so that we weren't feeling miffed that we weren't fully taken on board. So overall, I know that some members of the group are very disappointed because there's a certain amount of rowing back for what Mr. Spur would say is his new favourite word of pragmatism. But it's right. It's right that we align with the government. It's right that we align with other places and move forward. And that's exactly what this plan will help us do. So I'm hoping that everybody will vote for it.
We got proposal sector for this item. All in favour? Again. Item 12. Customer Contract and Digital Strategy 2025 to 28 and RTP Strategy 2025 to 28. Councillor Witt.
Mr. Mayor, can I move this one, please?
No, second that.
Second that. Just a quick note, I think some of my colleagues have really seen that, you know, the council website, to make it a bit more user-friendly and have a bit of like a refresher, just kind of updated in that sense. So if that could be possibly looked at, that's more of a generic policy-wise, we're happy to spring it.
Mr. Mayor, just responding to that and welcome Councillor Mahmood's comments on that. I think there is a balance to be struck between the longevity of the council and the cost of any significant changes that we might want to make to the website. Being pragmatic, I think it may be possible to do some improvements, but I don't think we could have a root and branch change to the system because the life of this council is not long enough to make that worthwhile. I think if we got an old singing, old dancing website by 2027 and we're abolished in 2028, people would look askance at the cost of doing that. So I think where we can, if I can use the word titivate, if we can titivate it, let's do that, but let's not go all out to reinvent it. I just do not think it's a wise use of our time and resources, and I hope Councillor Mahmood would accept that position.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, sir. I agree with what you were saying there. But the other consideration we've got to take into consideration is the LGR. Whichever outcome we've come forward in the next couple of years, we need to be able to speak to them first and see if we're working on the same system or a different system. I think, like the lady said then, you don't want to spend a lot of money for the next 2 years and then in 2 years' time spending an even vast amount of money to integrate into the new iteration that we end up being this.
Councillor Holman.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be supporting the motion that's put forward. Just want to touch upon people who, vulnerable people in Pendle who haven't got access to IT or struggling with IT, need some help. So I think there is mention in the strategy, but I think as long as we don't forget them people who are struggling with people who need help.
Councillor Coburn Price.
Thank you. Yes, we did discuss this at OS and these two documents. And I think the feedback was basically that if you have a choice between phoning up or accessing the website, and more people choose to phone up, and more people end up getting frustrated with the phone call, whereas if they go on the website, the experience is quite positive. We asked a few more questions about the samples and the feedback and such like, so I know Sarah Aston would get a bit more information for us all on that one, just to flesh out the reports. But the website does contain an awful lot of information, lots of translation things, lots of logical setups for it and everything. So we quite like the website as it is, and let's not spend a fortune on it. But yeah, I'll support this.
We've got a proposal second for this item. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 30, safeguarding policy.
Mr Mayor, could I propose that we do agree this revised safeguarding policy for children, young people and adults? We are all aware of the inquiry that is being carried out nationwide into grooming, and as a member of this authority for many, many years, I would be aghast if anything of that nature was happening here in Pendle. And I think that the stronger that we can make this, the better. And particularly the resolution about checking those people operating within Pendle who are registered outside Pendle, I think that's an important issue. So I do move this, and I hope again that we'll have unanimous agreement on it.
Councillor Church.
I second and reflect everything that the leader has said about this. There is one point here, I have to admit I'm slightly embarrassed that it hadn't occurred to me before, and that is the matter of DBS checks for elected members, for everybody here. It seems such an obvious thing that ought to be done, that I'd never thought of wondering why it wasn't. So, with some hint of apology on that matter, I draw everyone's attention to item 3. Thank you.
Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to support this new policy update and echo what Councillor Rick was saying. You know, there is a national inquiry going on, just generally speaking, and you know, we should, as a council, as a core organisation, work with all the relevant authorities, especially the police and the safeguarding agencies in the area to kind of keep our people safe.
We've got proposal seconder for this item. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 14, Corn Market Public Realm Works and lift replacement. Councillor Witt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's quite a lengthy report which goes into quite a lot of detail. In a nutshell, the work on Corn Market Hall has been carried out within budget and has indeed been extended onto the first floor because of the change from residential development to commercial space. As a consequence of the residential development not taking place, there's, well, in the report it talks to about 1.682 million pounds, which isn't coming in as match funding for the project. So the contractors, our programme managers, our officers have managed to execute a significant amount of work within that budget, but unfortunately at the end, towards the end of the job, there isn't enough money in the pot in order to do a quality resurfacing work in front of the market hall, what's described as public realm. So I don't think we can leave this in a half-finished state. It's not something that we could operate a market hall without repairing the flags in front of it. And so I would like to see the council agree to this funding in order for us to do the proper job to the public realm in front of the market hall. You'll see in the report that there are different options in terms of what I would describe as a cheap and cheerful job with coloured asphalt, which is costed at £130,000. A product called Kellen, which is a reconstituted concrete paving, and then Yorkstone, which is similar to the material, or perhaps identical to the material that we just used as a council in Eadie and Barnoldswick. And my recommendation to the council and proposal would be that we do undertake repaving in what's described as Yorkstone in here, which is Holcombe paving, and that we carry out the lift replacement as well. Now, Mr Mayor, at next week's executive, we will be considering the outturn position for this council, and that's the outturn from the last financial year. And the good news is that we're putting £1.48 million into reserves. There was a modest contribution planned to go into reserves at the beginning of the year. There's quite significant changes in terms of income and expenditure, but the bottom line is that we've got almost £1.5 million additional money going into reserves. So the second part of my proposal is that we don't fund this by prudential borrowing, but that we ask the executive to consider funding the necessary work from that underspend, and that there isn't any borrowing involved in the equation. Now, I've not heard anything from the Deputy at Section 151 officer to say that we can't do that, so I'm hoping that she's not going to leap to her feet and say, oh, no, you can't. Mr Mayor, I think that it's incumbent upon the Council to carry on doing a quality job for Colne. I think the market hall is on the edge of the conservation area. It's opposite a listed building of some stature, and we want the work to be in keeping with those constraints. So I move this, Mr Mayor, and I certainly hope there is a unanimity across the Council that this is something that we should do and something that we want to do. Thank you.
You have a seconder? Okay. Any more speakers? Councillor Corbyn Price? Yeah.
So, you probably would expect me to wholeheartedly support Yorkstone, even though it's got the word York in it, and I'm not a massive fan of Yorkshire. But that end of town doesn't have Yorkstone paving. It's outside the conservation area, and it has little pavers. And the yellow asphalt, or the buff asphalt, would look absolutely awful because the main roadway through Colne is maroon. It's sort of speckled, it's not grey. So you'd have a horrible clash with the yellow and the maroon. So for me, that's a no. But if you look at the top paragraph on page 5, it talks about these little pavers. Now, I'm not a massive fan of concrete, as you all know, but it says they are the easiest to clean and also easily replaceable. Now, Colne councillors in the room will all know our continual battles with LCC, where we do have Yorkstone through the town. If there's a problem and the stones wear or sprawl or tip, they come, understandably, very, very swiftly, remove the stone and splodge some tarmac on it. We all write angry letters, it comes to Colne Town Council, we all get very cross, And then eventually, perhaps months later, they come and they put some York stone down. But that isn't this end of town, that's the other end of town. And we all know that there's going to be this area of public realm for the food hall. We're hoping for lovely weather like this, drinks spilling out, lovely meals, families, etc. So there will be spillage. There definitely will be spillage. And I can just see, I have quite a bit of York stone around my house. If you put something down on it, whether it's a garden pot or whatever it is, it soon discolours. So actually, easy to clean, and the fact that the operators want to go for this, and the fact it fits in with the little paving that we've already got at that end of town, and it's cheaper, to me does seem a better, more, I'm going to use Mr. Spur's word, pragmatic solution for Colne. I don't feel that it will take away from the heritage at all. We've got the modern building behind it, and I don't think it will take anything away from the conservation area or the listed Red Lion pub that's opposite. So I would propose that we go for the middle option. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Coburn-Price surprised me that she wants to go for something concrete. But I wholeheartedly agree with her justification on that. I'm delighted to see this paper. I'm never delighted to spend lots of money, but I'm delighted to see funding going into Colne Market. It's a great asset for the town and will be, continue to be once it reopens. It'll be an amazing thing to have in town. One thing that struck me on reading this report under paragraph 3 on page 2 is externally new Parliament Street side doorways are being formed. That rings alarm bells for me, Mr. Mayor. Having studied this building for many years now under its construction or redevelopment, and sort of sat on the Market Traders Forum with Councillor Lord for years as well, one of the most important things that we must do for Colne Market is tackle ASB. Now, the antisocial behaviour that's been attracted in Colne Market has usually been caused by children cycling through the market, skateboarding through the market, running through the market from one door to another. And it's caused havoc for the traders. So having extra doorways on this building is a bit of an alarm bell. I'm already sort of disappointed in some fashion that the front of the building has multiple entrances, because the market as it stood was slightly confusing into how you actually approached it. It wasn't very clear how to get into the building. And I think we've probably not solved that issue. So extra doors are not really a good thing. Anybody who visits Colne Sainsbury's of an evening and tries to get in through what we call the top door end up frustrated that it closes at 6 o'clock. Now, it closes at 6 o'clock because they suffer from ASB, from having multiple ways in and out of the building. So having extra doorways on a building is not always a good thing. So I think I'm seeking reassurance, really. I'm not necessarily against doors, but how are they used? What are they for? Are they there for the traders to get in and out? If they're locked during the day and during the operation of the market, fine. But if they're actually an entrance and exit into the building, then that's ringing serious alarm bells that have been raised by not just councillors and traders that have been in the market, but also by the police. So I think it's something that we need to pay careful attention to. As for the rest of it, I completely agree with my colleagues' summations. I'm surprised that we don't want to go for the sort of gold-plated version and spend more money on this. It's not necessarily the best thing to have on this building. So I think that, again, the pragmatic approach is to go for the middle one, save a little bit of money, but the design is right. Let's go with that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to second Councillor Whip's motion for Market has already been seconded. So happy to support the natural stone for these works. We're going to have a look at this the new Market Hall while works are still in progress. A couple of weeks back, and things are coming together. There'll be, there's going to be like a food court in the middle. This is going to bring new traders, new footfall, new people. People who normally go to other places, and they're coming into Colne Town Centre, and I think that's a great story. I think the thing I will say, that front bit where the works are going to take place has been trashed by the developers. I think the code maybe should have been a bit more careful. I do understand, I do get it that, you know, they haven't been using some heavy equipment there, but, you know, there is ways and means of doing things, and I think that cost could have been considerably less had they been a bit more careful. I would have originally asked for a contribution for them, but I think, you know, we need these works to kind of move forward quite fast, and we need this Home Market Hall open as soon as possible, ideally this end of Christmas, by ideally November, so, you know, the traders can, you know, get everything set up for Christmas, people can use that service. So I think that would be great if we can get it done this side of Christmas. I do understand practicality wise sometimes things are quite challenging and difficult, especially by you know, with all the works that are taking place on the first floor and also on the ground floor. But yeah, I think all in all, I think it's great that, you know, things are coming together now, and I think this is a great story that the Pendle Council, you know, we are investing hundreds of thousands of pounds in our towns across the whole of Pendle.
Councillor Long.
It's all right. It's been said.
We've got proposal, second there. You only respond to Councillor.
Thank you. In responding to the debate, hopefully there is a majority in favour of the original resolution, not the amendment. I agree with Sarah Coburn-Price that yellow asphalt would look awful, and I just wanted to ease her concerns about the Holcombe paving, which we've used hundreds of square metres of in Earby and Donaldswick, and it is an eminently practical solution for this paving, and of a high quality. It does clean easily, and it provides a good grippy surface for people. The other point is that these areas are not Lancashire County Council's responsibility. They're not highway, they are frontage and the responsibility of the Borough Council. So in terms of the County Council coming along and ripping flags up and putting a bit mat down, well, they're not going to be responsible for the area, and so long as I'm leader of the council, we won't be doing that sort of job. So you have my assurance on that. The issue that Councillor Sutcliffe raises about the additional door, I think, you know, that's a valid issue to be discussed, but it's not really central to the discussion that we're having here tonight. So I won't really go on to any further within that. And Councillor Mahmood raises the issue of the demolition contractors having smashed that area up. I mean, following the removal of the canopy, it wasn't in good condition. Whether the contractors would make any concessions in terms of contributing to the cost, I don't know, but we can certainly ask them. In terms of the timescale, we are aiming for practical completion on the contract currently underway by the end of September, and it's hoped that we can get the market up and running in November before Christmas. It will be tight, and obviously we've had to wait until this meeting this evening in order to be able to get on with the paving works, which again is another job that will need to be done. So I'm not going to commit to say, oh, you'd definitely be there up and running in November. I think there's a lot of work to be done yet, and I think we will need a lot of luck to make sure that everything goes bang, bang, bang and slots into place. But it's certainly the aspiration to have that November opening sooner rather than later. Hopefully, Mr Mayor, the amendment will be defeated and the original resolution will be approved.
I don't think we got a second for the amendment.
Was it not seconded?
No.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I said I don't know how to second it.
Well,
Howard?
I think it's seconded now.
Oh,
right,
second.
okay.
Okay.
We'll have to take that as the...
Yeah.
We have to vote on that then.
Yeah. Can we vote
On the amendment.
On the amendment? All those in favour? Against? Sorry.
6, yeah. Again.
Against?
Yeah. That's different.
That's it's lost. So now with the original motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 15, Overview and Scrutiny Committee. To receive and consider nominations for 2 vice chairs of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, one from the Conservative and one from the Independent group. Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I nominate Councillor David Gordon for that position?
Independent group. Yvonne Tennant. All those in favour? That's okay, no problem. Item 16, Mayoralty. Council advised that the Deputy Mayor for 2026-27 is to be selected from the Liberal Democrat group. Councillor Whip.
Mr Mayor, it's with great delight that I propose that Councillor Andy Bell is whatever is selected, it says here, for the Deputy Mayoralty for the municipal year 26-27.
Second that? Sorry? You don't need to second that one. Okay. Yeah. Item 17, representative on the outside body. How would you want to say?
Yes, it just might be helpful to try to make this process as efficient as possible if I just briefly introduce this. It represents a degree of unfinished business from the annual council, which I think was pretty unavoidable because clearly there were 11th hour talks which led to a very late formation of a new administration on the evening in question, and therefore some of the odds and ends around appointments on outside bodies weren't properly or satisfactorily dealt with. Because the item appeared and decisions were made on the night, there's a technical step I'd invite the council to take if somebody could ideally move and second the suspension of Rule 18.1 of the standing orders for this item, so that we can then make the necessary confirmations to the chart that's appended to this report. So I would invite that first of all, and then draw attention to the items that need attention.
Mr Mayor, I'm prepared to put Howard out of his misery and move the suspension of Standing Order 18.1, which is the one that relates to reconsidering decisions within 6 months.
Councillor Mahmood, you second that?
If I can assist.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
The first one that needs formalising is the joint venture company directorships, and I understand that Councillor Hanif is to be replaced by Councillor Church, but that needs to be ratified, so if we could move and second that, then that would be helpful.
Councillor Mahmood. Yeah.
Seconded.
All those in favour?
The next one I understand is the Lancashire Waste Partnership, where it is suggested that Councillor Zafar Ali is to be replaced by Councillor Mohammed Iqbal, if somebody could oblige with that.
Second that.
All those in favour?
Similarly, the Nelson Town Deal Board, where Councillor Iqbal is to be replaced by Councillor Newman.
Mr Mayor,
Sorry.
on this one, I did suggest Councillor Newman, but quite honestly, I do think that there ought to be another Nelson councillor there, and I would move that Councillor Mohammed Iqbal retains his position on the Town Deal Board.
in which case nothing needs to be moved then.
You got a second that. All those in favour? That's carried. Okay.
The next one I have is the North Western Local Authorities Employees Organisation, where the proposal is that Councillor Mahmood is replaced by Councillor Whip.
I'm sure that Councillor Mahmood will be devastated to lose this nomination, Mr Mayor.
You have a seconder?
Second.
Okay. All those in favour? That's carried. Anything else?
Just there's a clarification, also a slight change on the Pendle public-private partnership with Liberator, in that it's suggested, I think, that Councillor Iqbal replace Councillor Almer, and there is a slight error in that it is a 2-2-1 split, but with that note, if somebody could move accordingly.
Councillor Mahmood?
So I move Councillor Mohammed needs to remain on that donation. Right, public partnership.
Yes, Councillor Hanif on that. And Iqbal.
Iqbal.
Yes, Mr Mayor, so as I understand it, I'm sticking to the paperwork, as I understand it, Councillor Mohammed Amr to be replaced by Councillor Mohammed Iqbal.
All, you have a seconder?
Happy to second that.
All those in favour? That's carried. Anything else?
We're nearly there. Pendle Vision Board. I think it's going to have to be either Councillor Hanif or Councillor Mahmood. As I understand it, it's 1-1-1.
Mr Mayor, somebody was pointing over there, but I've got wrong glasses on. Mr Mayor, can I say that this meets at 7:30 a.m. tomorrow morning, and I'm looking for a volunteer from my group willing to join me at not quite the break of dawn. If there's anybody willing to volunteer, Councillor Strickland is volunteering his services, so I will move Councillor Strickland.
You have a seconder? All those in favour? Councillor Mahmood, yeah?
Councillor Hanif to be removed.
Councillor Hanif to be removed and Councillor Strickland. So we are all those in, you have all those in favour? Against?
And I think just very, very finally, Paul tells me that the Pendle Leisure Trust Board, it's a matter of reappointment of the three names there.
Mr Mayor, we did look at the extending the membership to 4 councillors. That's not within the constitution, so we're not able to do that. On behalf of my group, can I move that Councillor Lord be reappointed to the Pendle Leisure Trust?
Councillor Mahmood?
Councillor Hanif.
Councillor Hanif? This is the one from the Conservatives. Pendle Leisure.
Councillor Stone.
Councillor Stone. Seconders? No, no.
Second.
All those in favour? Against?
Thank you.
Carried.
Thank you.
Right. Item 18, notice of motion. The first one, conflict in Palestine. Move by Councillor Mohammed Iqbal.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'm trying to move the motion as set out, and I won't read it because it's quite lengthy, people can read it for themselves. But 3 years ago, Mr Mayor, we discussed a similar motion, and that led to me being suspended from the party that I joined at the time, 30 years earlier, thinking it was the party that stood up for injustices and humanity. And under the current leadership of Keir Starmer, that clearly is not the case. That if you dare speak out against the genocide that's going on in Palestine, you're immediately suspended or kicked out of the Labour Party. So that's unfortunately the Labour Party that we've got today. But Mr Mayor, everybody sees on the TV every night what's going on there. I think it's a sad reflection on our humanity, and we'll be judged in the future for not speaking out against that genocide that's going on in Palestine. Because what happened on October the 7th, you know, I condemn what Hamas did to those 1,200 Israeli people that were there. Well, the fact is that 1,200 people were killed on that day. How many tens of thousands have been killed since then by the Israeli military? to, and I believe to compensate for the loss of those 1,200. There's still hostages held by Hamas, and I think they should be released immediately. But the world needs to stand up and speak against what Benjamin Netanyahu and the IDF are doing in Palestine. And it's sad reflection on our government that we're arming those jets in Israel to go and bomb innocent women and children in Palestine. And our government is not speaking out. Nor is any government for that matter. I believe that it's time that the people of this country, and generally across the world, and we're seeing whether it's people that are in the rock star industry, sports people, other people, actors, speaking out against the genocide that's going on. But sadly, the political leadership on an international level is failing those poor, innocent children and women that are being killed on a daily basis. The motion is set out there to ask our MPs, the 2 MPs that represent our constituencies, to stand up in Parliament and speak out. And if that means that they get suspended, then at least they've been suspended on something that's right and that they will be judged in future. But Mr Mayor, I would ask colleagues to support the motion set out, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Mr Mayor, I have said this before and I will say it again. In UK schools, Drive, work in college, British values are promoted to prepare students for life in modern Britain, encompassing democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty and mutual respect, and tolerance for those with different faiths and beliefs. These values are not unique to Britain, but they actually are the fundamental foundation of how we operate and build a cohesive and democratic society. That's the seriousness of British values, if we believe in it. But what are we actually seeing in reality? Sadly, the complete opposite, in my view and many others' views. That is our government actually upholding what it's telling us to teach our society. What is the government doing? Condoning and aiding a genocide. Sending weapons to allow murder. People murdering with passionate intent. Yeah? Passionate intent. They're open about it. They are not dumbing anything down. They are not secretly. Yes, they are openly doing this. We're maintaining friendships with people who have publicly said to wipe out a people. That is wrong. Completely wrong. We've got mockery of democracy, law and order. We pick and choose when we like. That is not the way to lead a nation. We see abuse of power, shameful reporting by the media. There are no words left to describe what the world is coming to. But there'll still be those that will say, what's Palestine over there got to do with us? Well, what it's showing is the cracks in Britain. If we look at UK and what it is doing, what is surfacing underneath is open racism. When you are aiding a nation to do what it's doing, you are complicit. You are saying it's okay to do that, and it is not. In UK, we focus on safeguarding children in schools, our children, and yet we're sending arms to Israel to bomb those children, Gaza children. Yes. How is our children and their children any different? You can see why I have a problem with this in education. In the UK, we collaborate with nurses, doctors, speech and language therapists, all these people to help our children flourish, to have a good life in this country. But then how can this government aid Israel in eliminating those very same professionals across in the East? The hypocrisy makes my insides cherry, irks me. British doctors, such as Victoria Rose, our own doctors, have made statements that the Palestinian children are being targeted, deliberately shot in the neck and the head and the eye. These are our own doctors. But what does our government continue to do? Send arms. Our social media is full of visual reports. Our own humanitarian organisations are saying we need to stop this. What does our government do? Nothing. The good British people and the people around the world, their heart, like mine, is broken over this. It's a massive issue. We want to speak up, protest, do all that we can. We are frustrated. But what is the government doing? They are gagging people, arresting people, and our government inflicts more harm on its own people who want to speak out against this rather than those who are committing the genocide. I hear from so many teachers, they contact me saying, Ruby, we want to talk about Palestine. Our kids want to say stuff. But we're afraid that if we do, we will lose our job. We will be labelled anti-Semitic. This is fear breeding through our society. Leaders who lead through fear are not leaders at all. What we should do is encourage people to talk. Talking to each other is the fabric of human nature. That we want to be able to speak to each other, respect each other's opinions, and challenge each other's thoughts, but debate respectfully. And if we do not encourage schools, colleges, universities to create opportunities to talk, then we are heading towards a very dangerous future. What I pray for is that there is an end to global suffering. Any human would want that. An end to the occupation, an end to all acts of tyranny across the world, and an end to the fake peacemaking nonsense that people are uttering. It's fake. We want an end to divisions created between people. People should be able to live as equals, be free from tyranny. All people deserve justice and peace. Please, everybody, support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those that don't know my history, I'm actually ex-military. I know I've been promoted with Councillor Salter there as a Veterans Forces champion. If you've not witnessed war, I'll say no, you don't want to. In 1994, I deployed to Yugoslavia, as it was on there, and it was genocide at that point. I was sent out as a peacekeeper with the UN. I think I wore my helmet and a flak jacket more times than I'd like to remember. We were wearing it every day because we were receiving incoming shells, small arms. But I was an adult. Last year, I know how much anger was in this area because I volunteered to be the Royal British Legion Poppy Appeal organiser. And down at Asda in Coles and Errol on the border, I was given a lot of poppies, wreaths, grave markers, be it non-denominational, Christian, I've never heard of I don't know what it is. I found out what it was. It is a religion. The Crescent and the Star of David. And I know how Triangle was actually created at that point because within 24 hours, every single Star of David had gone missing off that table overnight. To me, that's theft because it's not being paid and it's not respecting another faith. That I understand because that is anger. But I agree that we need to stand unilaterally, stand together and say morally, ethically, what is happening over wherever you want to call it is wrong. And we need to support our residents in this area and say, we're not going to chip it one over another. We're not going to choose one. For no reason, we can't. We've got to stand against it. War is horrible. War is nasty. And I'll tell you, I don't want to go there again. Problem is, I did it 3 times within a very short period. And I will back this and I'll support this motion. Thank you.
Any more speakers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be supporting the motion. Obviously, we know where this started. Obviously, Hamas killed over 1,200 Israelis and have taken hostages, and we urge, that was a very wrong thing to do, a very bad thing to do, and we urge Hamas to release those hostages without any conditions. But all 54,000 people that have been, and these are the recorded figures, people have died, have been killed. I've seen people being killed over the last 18 months, nearly 2 years now, and over 125,000 have been injured. And the official figure is probably a lot higher, and the Lancet Medical Journal, I think Lancet, quotes that there'll be probably thousands and thousands of people buried under the rubble of those collapsed and bombed buildings. You know, I mean, you could be talking about hundreds of thousands of people who have been killed over the last, I'd say, over the last 18 months to nearly 2 years now. And I was reading the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva. If you go to their headquarters, it has embossed, you know, like a logo saying in huge letters on a glass told even wars have rules. And one of our ministers very recently said that what was happening in Palestine, using food as a weapon, and, you know, indiscriminate kind of bombing, a genocide was being created there. And you know, I think, Mr. Mayor, it's really important, you know, in the 21st century, you know, we're having these wars. We had Rwanda, I think, not many, 20, 25 years ago, we had Srebrenica, I think, 20th anniversary is next week, 30th anniversary next week. You know, in history terms, that's just yesterday, and you know, in the 21st century, we should be learning from those lessons. And the Geneva Convention, after World War II, when all, you know, the countries, the nations came together, and they said, you know, never again. And what we see now is it's happening again. And I quote, you know, the chief executive or the leader of the International Committee of the Red Cross, and she says, you know, a child in Gaza has exactly the same protection under the Geneva Conventions as a child in Israel. And I think that speaks volumes. You know, it just seems like the people in Gaza have no value of life. You know, they're just like just another number. And you know, we're getting all the leaders and all the people just kind of, you know, condoning what's happening, but there's no real action to prevent it from happening. And the thing is, the will is there. I think that the international community, our Prime Minister, can step in and take that bold action and take the leadership and take it, you know, to Europe. You know, whether that means, you know, sanctions, you know, arms sanctions, or other, arms embargo, or some kind of other sanctions, that, you know, some kind of, let's say it's more for international level, but it can be done and it can be prevented. And one life lost is just too many. And we've had, let's say, over 55,000, that's the quote of this 3 days, and these are the recording figures. So we do urge our local MPs, and I don't think our MPs, I think the Burnley, the Pendle MP has spoken about in favour of a ceasefire, but I don't think our Pendle MP, Pendle Cleaver MP has asked for a ceasefire or spoken in, I can't remember him speaking at all about this issue. And we urge that, you know, he does get involved. You know, he represents the whole of Pendle and Clitheroe. And you know, we need some action. You know, I think the Prime Minister needs to take, you know, like I said, the words, you know, but I think it's time for action there to put a stop to it. And like I say, it can be done if the will is there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to support this motion unheartedly, and I rise to stand on the right side of history. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Iqbal pointed out that when this motion first came to this chamber, maybe 2 years ago, there were raw emotions at the time. Public outcry and outrage at the time was unprecedented, and in my short time in service for the good people of Briarfield East and Clover Hill, I had never experienced or seen such outrage at what was going on in Palestine. And let's not forget, the conflict in Gaza and Palestine is not something that came to fruition on October the 7th. We all know the backstory and the history, but what this latest conflict has brought to public knowledge now is the unprecedented levels of double standards, not only in, as Councillor Ruby has mentioned, in institutions, in educational institutions, but of course at the very top with government departments, MPs being bought out
left, right and centre with lobbying groups. And as Councillor Ashford pointed out, we clearly haven't learned our lesson as a human race, as mankind. 30 years to the day tomorrow is actually Srebrenica's Genocide Memorial Day. And when we look at Srebrenica, you talk about 8,000 Muslim men and women who were brutally slaughtered, and it's a recognised genocide. That's 8,000. Here, we're talking over 55,000 deaths, Mr. Mayor. 55,000 deaths, of which over 60, maybe even 70% are women and children. That's 55,000 deaths. That's more than half the population of Pendle, for goodness sake, Mr. Mayor. And to think how, I believe it was last week, this so-called BBC impartiality row kicked off with 100 journalists signing an open letter stating how they've been, in effect, censored to speak about both sides of this conflict and rather simply become a mouthpiece for Israel's propaganda. It's simply beggars belief and staggering to see how we live in a day and age of so much knowledge, so much information, and so much access to information that we see a genocide being committed in front of our very eyes. You all may have seen the Channel 4 documentary, which was pulled by the BBC. Shock, beggars belief again. But Channel 4, thank you to them for airing it. And the, again, unprecedented levels of inhumane injustice being committed on innocent, not only the innocent victims, but those who are trying to protect those victims. Sometimes you think, which world are we living in? And which part of the world are we living in when we have to encounter and witness these things happening only, several thousand miles away? I think this motion is very balanced. There's clearly no room for any political manoeuvring, and I urge colleagues to support this unanimously. As I say, I rise to stand on the right side of history, and I think it's important that motions like these continue until this conflict comes to an end, and we urge the powers that be to also be on the right side of history finally in 2025. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to take long. I wholeheartedly agree with what everyone said, but can I make one thing clear? This is not a war. What do the council said, talking about war? This is not war. The Palestinian people, no matter, they've no guns, they've no air force, they've nothing. This is quite clearly a genocide and ethnic cleansing, what is going on. Yeah. That is what it is. I don't know if colleagues have seen, the Palestinian people, no matter what age group, they've been called to pick aid up. They've been put in cages. As soon as they pick flour up on the way, they're being shot and they're being killed. This is what's going on. I'm sorry to say, no matter which political leadership whoever favours, whether it's the Labour or the Conservatives, these two, who before it was the Conservatives and it's Labour now, they are both part of this, what is going on. They are culprit just as much as the IDF and Benjamin Netanyahu. No matter whether it's Starmer, whether it's even now, a few weeks ago I saw the Conservative leader saying, yes, we agree with what Israel's doing, they have a right to defence. What are they defending themselves against? Innocent kids. It's heartbreaking what we see. If the BBC won't show you anything, if you go on social media, you go on Twitter, you see everything there. And all we hear in the House of Parliament, you have that clown, Lammy, standing up, yes, I condemn it, as if he's bowing to Netanyahu. And then on the other side, you've got the Tories doing the same. I'm sorry to say, they're not bothered. They're letting this continue. And our MPs, no matter, don't think you're going to get anything from their MPs because they're not allowed to speak. Whoever speaks, as Councillor Iqbal said, they're suspended or they're thrown out. Zahra Sultan is one prime example, who has now left the Labour Party. So I'm wholeheartedly supporting this, but please let's make this clear. This is not a war. This is genocide and ethnic cleansing, what's going on in Palestine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to make it clear I'm expressing my own personal opinion, not necessarily those of the group or the Conservative Party. I wanted to thank Councillor Iqbal and all those who have spoken so passionately on this resolution. I don't want to comment on the word genocide. I'm not an expert on the definition of that, so I'm not going to comment on it. What I did want to say is that I have a very similar motion following this. Councillor Anwar made a very, very powerful point, which I think we should consider again, because it's worth reiterating. I serve as a governor on both college and a school, and as Councillor Anwar said, we talk to our children about British values. Every child in Pendle learns about British values. And those British values are, to be clear, as Councillor Anwar pointed out, democracy, rule of law, fairness and tolerance. And there is obviously, on any rational basis, a huge disconnect between what we are telling our children and what our government is sponsoring through its foreign policy abroad. I'm not going to get into specific theatres, but there is clearly a huge disconnect. We see on our television screens horrible scenes of human misery, of murder, of slaughter, and we hear virtual silence from our government on it. Nothing. This, Mr. Mayor, is unfortunately an unsustainable disconnect between what we preach at home and what we do through our foreign policy. Mr. Mayor, I will be voting for this motion on the terms that I've described because it is right and it is proper. We can no longer continue turning a blind eye and pretending that all is well. We cannot go on like this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In reflecting on British values and the BBC, my mind casts back to Glastonbury, where one of the performers chanted "Death to the IDF." Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that that is a phrase that should be considered controversial. It's very clear to me from their actions that the IDF is a military branch of a fascist government that is continuing to take out actions on innocent civilians that should not occur in this world. And I mean, I would say the same thing about any military operation which is taking out those actions on any people. But, Mr. Mayor, I think it's of the utmost importance that we allow those kinds of expressions of beliefs to occur, that we allow people to call out injustice where they see it, and I wholeheartedly support this motion.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak, but because I think a lot of the points that I wanted to make have been made by previous speakers. So I'll just say what's coming to my mind in terms of, if you look at what's happened, we mentioned Srebrenica, and we heard after that genocide that history, we should learn from history and it shouldn't happen again. And yet here we are, all them years later, and what we learnt as human beings, in my view, nothing. And history isn't going to judge world leaders and others in a nice way. And when we've had this debate in the council chamber previously, and has been mentioned by the speakers, when people speak on this issue, we were told you can't speak because you're being anti-Semitic. It's not about being anti-Semitic. The debate's moved on from there, and people say, well, if you speak on this issue, you're a Hamas supporter. I've heard that on a number of occasions, saying, oh, well, so you're supporting Hamas. No, we're not supporting Hamas. We're here for humanity. And I think that's the crucial thing, irrespective of race, religion, or where people come from. And everyone has to be judged equally, and all lives matter equally. And there's discussions around, we've heard, for example, as a Prime Minister, and I'm singling out the Prime Minister because there was an interview and Keir Starmer was asked about whether he believed war crimes were taking place in Gaza, and he said, that's not for him to judge, that's others, etc., etc. Yet, when he was asked about Ukraine, he, even without any evidence, etc., and said, yeah, war crimes are taking place in Ukraine. I think the double standards, as we mentioned, the hypocrisy is unbelievable. And I'm singling out Keir Starmer, but other leaders as well. So it's not just Keir Starmer and across the world. But I show a lot of respect. There are world leaders out there who have actually spoken out in certain countries and on the right side of history and have spoken out on this issue. In terms of the documentary recently, which was aired on Channel 4, BBC refused to, as Councillor Ali mentioned, refused to show that documentary. Over 1,000 medics have been killed. Over 1,000. These are the people actually trying to help people. And what we've heard excuses from the Israeli government and the IDF on numerous occasions. Every time there's an excuse, we'll hold an internal inquiry. Hospitals get bombed and say, oh well, there's a mistake. We'll look into it. Schools, people lining up for food, killed. We'll look into it. How many excuses can they come up with? It's unbelievable what's happened. It's unbelievable. And how the media, the bias, really is on the wrong side of history again. And the amount of people that have been slaughtered, and leaders, world leaders, who can stop it. And I genuinely believe it. I think the only person who can really stop it is Trump. And he's the only person who's got influence. The Israeli government don't care about what Keir Starmer says. That's clear from the comments. They don't care about other European leaders. The only person is Trump, unfortunately. And his view changes every day. So we don't know what his position is or what he isn't. And I think, yeah, I'll be supporting. I was going to make comments on the motion itself because I wanted some momentum, but I don't think it's appropriate to make them changes. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Councillor Salter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to the Deputy Mayor, I wasn't planning to speak on the motion. However, I heard some very clear statements made by councillors in the chamber. Like Andy said, if you've been in war, if you've been in conflicts, I went through Falklands, 2 Gulf Wars, Kosovo. It's dirty business. It is a dirty business. When you join the military, you're briefed on actions that you can take. You're not allowed to attack civilians. It's illegal. You're in a situation where, if you've got to look at history, look at the world wars we've had, the Second World War, there was genocide against the Jewish people. This is why the state of the state of Israel came about in the 40s. However, there's limits. Now, there's a lot of support for the Israeli government by different associations around the world. However, it still doesn't stop the fact that crimes are being committed now which have gone beyond conflict. It's not a soldier shooting at another soldier who's shooting at him. It's not self-protection of yourself against someone who's trying to attack you. And I think this is where, especially with some of the speeches that were made and the statements made, I fully will accept the motion tonight, mainly because the fact that it is breaking international law, and I think that politics are getting involved, which stop people saying what they really feel. So, thank you.
No, I shocked everyone to the wall.
All those in favour? Against?
Abstain.
Abstention?
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Yes.
Second motion is supporting residents and upholding the international law, to be moved by Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. June the 26th was the 80th anniversary of the signing of the UN Charter, when the United Kingdom became one of 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. And the UN Charter was explicitly aimed to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. And, Mr. Mayor, Article 2.4 outlawed the use of force except for self-defence or missions authorised by the UN Security Council. Mr. Mayor, when Russia illegally invaded Ukraine, we saw instant and repeated condemnations from London about that action. We hear numerous condemnations and pontifications about how we must defend the rules-based international order. But, Mr. Mayor, there has been no such condemnation of recent US and Israeli attacks on Iran. There was no such condemnation when the UK illegally participated in an invasion of Iraq in 2003, or when it participated in the bombing of Libya in 2011. None of these actions, none of these brutal military actions were legal under the UN Charter or under Article 2.4. And as we touched upon in the earlier debate, we are rightly a country that prides ourselves on our British values. And we define ourselves in that way. And we sit here in the chamber, all parties, all faiths, all persuasions, and we discuss things in a civil manner, and we resolve things through the democratic process. But, Mr. Mayor, there is a bizarre disconnect between what we preach domestically and what our Foreign and Commonwealth Office does and what our foreign policy represents. And much as we might like to say, or David Lammy might like to say, oh, I'm defending international law and other states must follow our lead in defending international law, nobody is listening.
That's right.
Nobody. We have lost, through our repeated episodes of rank hypocrisy, any respect for our foreign policy in the world. And by the world, I don't mean the United States and its European allies. I mean the global majority, the world outside North America and Europe. And that is where the bulk of the population lives. And we can no longer pretend that we are some exemplars of soft power and that our voice matters. It doesn't matter, it matters less and less, Mr. Mayor, because we keep undermining our own message through our actions, through what we do in terms of our foreign policy and our defence policy and security policy, and the way that we fund arms or the way that we fail to condemn certain actions. And people say, sometimes people say, well, these motions are divisive. Mr. Mayor, wars are divisive. The death, injury and destruction and human tragedy is divisive. These are wars of choice. Nobody's attacking the United Kingdom. We are involved in wars of choice, to be clear, and we cannot expect Pendle residents, they don't live in a vacuum. They know what's going on in the world around them. They can see beyond the UK. And so we fatally undermine ourselves and our influence around the world when we contradict what we say domestically with what we actually do in our foreign policy. Mr. Mayor, I won't repeat, I'm running out of time. I appreciate I will take this resolution, this motion as read, but I would urge everyone to consider voting for this and take it in the spirit of it being a cross-community, cross-party motion which is designed to unite and show the people of residents of Pendle that we all stand with them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wholeheartedly support this and I'm happy to second this. I think with the previous motion as well and what Councillor Stone said, I think everything's been said, so I'm not going to add anything, just happily second this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to pick up on a point, in fact, that Councillor Stone made in his previous speech. I was contacted by a resident from my ward about a school that they attended outside of the ward. I'm not going to name and shame, but it was bizarre because the comments that were being made resonate with Councillor Stone, as already mentioned. So the issue involved students attending the school wanting to wear certain T-shirts with solidarity for the people of Palestine and the children of Palestine, in fact. And they were sent home from school and asked to change their T-shirts, not forgetting that only 12 months prior, or however many months prior, there were similar fundraising events for Ukraine at the time, rightly so, and students were entitled to express their views and their allegiance for the outrage that was taking place in Ukraine. But the fact that when it came to Palestine, they were sent home to change their T-shirts. Anyway, long story short, the parents approached the head teacher and asked, why is it that we have one approach and one stance for Ukraine and another for Palestine? And honestly, these words made me so angry that we have individuals in public office, or in this case, in office of responsibility, looking after children and nurturing the future generation. And the reply was, Mr. Mayor, that we, and these are not my words, these are the words of this so-called professional, that we knew who the perpetrators were in Ukraine, we don't know who the perpetrators are in Palestine. Can you just imagine the level of unprofessionalism and completely out of touch nature of this particular individual? And it just goes to show, as Councillor Stone has pointed out, there's clearly systematic issues within our society. And this motion obviously is also very well set out in trying to address and bring to the surface those problems that we are now facing within in the modern world that we live in. I wholeheartedly support the motion as set out, and I'd also urge colleagues to do so unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any more speakers? Councillor Army?
Yeah, I think when the recent events took place and Iran was unlawfully attacked, we went back to the Iraq War when the Prime Minister in America and everyone stood up and said, oh well, we're at imminent threat, and we're going to be attacked, and if we don't do anything, this is going to happen, and here we go, and we know the rest is history. And the interference in other countries, Libya and others, are an example of where state interference doesn't help. You can't go in other countries and enforce what you believe is right without any legal right whatsoever. And we heard the same again this time in terms of Iran, and we heard evidence, and I watched this documentary about the Israeli Prime Minister, about how he's been leading this campaign for decades. Time and time has stated Iran has got nuclear weapons and attackers, it's imminent. You can say that for the last 30 odd years. And again, it's proven when the American president's own advisors were saying only a few weeks before that there isn't the imminent threat. And then we know what happened. So I think the hypocrisy, we just, as the UK, we just follow what our superiors do in terms of America, which is totally wrong. And there wasn't the imminent threat. And I think people have moved on, and people have social media. People haven't got access just to the BBC propaganda or Sky News or others. people do their own research, social media, and young people particularly have got so much knowledge on these issues, and they know what's going on in the world, they know what's right, what's wrong, which is one of the reasons why people have got no faith in politicians, because they're seeing their leaders, so-called leaders, and they're saying, look, you're telling us about democracy, about standing on the right side of the law, about justice, humanity, but you're not doing it. And yet when people criticise, then you feel like you're being, I'm standing up here and I feel like maybe I'm dishonouring the role of Deputy Mayor, I don't know. I'm speaking up against the government. And I don't think that's right. I think we should be able to speak our mind, within reason obviously. And it comes back to that point, it's about humanity. And I think world leaders and society, I think unfortunately, not probably maybe generalising, that we've lost track of that. We're judging events and what's going on what's hidden maybe underneath. It's hard to explain, but rather than just basing on, it's just a human being, how can a human being cause so much harm and devastation to a human being? That's all that matters to me. Not bother whether it's Gaza, Africa, or any other country. There's atrocities happening against other religions, against Christianity, there's African countries, and that upsets me just as equally. And that's how it should be, rather than basing it on what suits us, what's in the best interest, or what we believe is in our interest. But the long-term consequences of that are what Councillor Stone mentioned, that people lose faith, they don't trust politicians, they don't believe what they're saying. So I'll be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stone, you want to say anything to wrap you up, or?
Good, thank you.
All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Local government reorganisation, Councillor Wick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A significant change of gear. This motion is about the latest position with local government reorganisation, and I promised earlier in the meeting to bring a bit of an update. All 15 councils in the Greater Lancashire area are working on drawing up an evidence base that will be used to support submissions. There is a bit of an impasse at the moment. There were 2 meetings today where we hope there would be agreement that all authorities would agree to draw options for different numbers of unitary authorities in a recast Lancashire. And unfortunately, we're not at that point yet. But this motion reaffirms the position that this council has taken in recent months, last year and earlier this year. And it goes on to say that this council's preference is that any new unitary authority for our area shouldn't cover the whole of East Lancashire, and that the presence of 2 new unitary authorities for East Lancashire is what we want and resolves accordingly. And then to support that position, we go on to say that Council also resolves to carry out thorough consultation with residents on the different unitary council options being considered, and that such research is used in the evidence base of the subsequent submission to government, and that we authorise the Chief Executive to commission this work. Now, Mr Mayor, we do hope that the 15 councils working together will commission a piece of research, market research, public consultation to support whatever options are put forward, and that there is a genuine attempt to get the views of local residents, not only here in Pendle, but across the piece, as to what their preferences are. Because I think that's a very important, a vital element within whatever setup we have in the future. If it's not possible for a 15 council approach to actually carry out that work, I hope that perhaps working with Burnley, maybe with others, that we can get that evidence and genuinely find out the views of local residents. We do know, of course, that the County Council have called for a referendum on the whole issue of reorganisation. The government have said, well, you know, we're not going to support that, and any such referendum would really not carry very much weight. But I think if there's proper research done and opinion taken from residents, that will actually give a lot of weight to residents' opinions. And I think that's absolutely vital. So why do we want to continue with pressing for our area and East Lancashire generally to have at least, well, 2 unitary councils? Firstly, it's so that those new unitaries can be as close as possible to people, and that we don't get subsumed within a 500,000 population plus body, which previously, I mean, I've described as monster authorities, and I remain of that opinion. Thinking about the combined authority that we will have, if there is only one council in East Lancashire, there will be only one East Lancashire voice on that combined authority, ranged against a number of authorities, unitary authorities from the west of the county. So if we get 2 unitary councils in East Lancashire, there will be 2 voices, and that will add strength to our fight. And if we end up with a single East Lancs unitary authority, it's going to be the most deprived council in the country, and surely that's not something that we want to support and create. So I move this, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Councillor Mahmood to second.
Councillor Mahmood.
I second the motion. I think Councillor has given quite background to LGR. A lot of work is taking place, so as a leader of deputies and also the leader of the independents, we support the 2 unitaries in East Lancashire. In my personal view, I think, when we have conversations in the wider political spectrum, if you will, I think it's going to be more likely to be one East Lancs authority. But we need to have the consultation from locals in the point of view. If we don't have that, if everything becomes East Lancashire wide, then that localism just disappears, which is what Councillor kind of touched on. So I think it's really important that you talk to other neighbouring authorities, especially Burnley and Rosendale, and then the key thing is have that consultation within Pendle, speak to our residents, have that engagement and seek their views, and then that is fed back to the council. Obviously, generally speaking, the cost, I think it has to be within. Obviously, nobody knows how much it's going to cost, but it has to be, within a reasonable kind of. It has to be reasonable. So yeah, I think that's probably that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Generally speaking, I don't have a problem with this motion. However, I think it's difficult because we're in a chicken and egg situation where we want to create a submission which is valuable to the government, which properly represents the people of not just Pendle, but of Lancashire. But without the data set to support that, it's difficult to say so. And that kind of goes through to what's being said about the consultation too. Now, if I went to somebody in the street today and said, are you in favour of local government reorganisation? I'm pretty much sure that they would say, absolutely not, I think it's a bad idea. Now, we are privy to a little bit more information being in this room. We are, we generally know a little bit more about what's going on. And communicating that out to the general public is incredibly important so that they understand the question that they are being asked. Because I sort of sit on the fence a little bit with LGR. I can see that actually cost sharing exercises could be really useful. Sharing of services could be really useful. But what does that look like for East Lancashire? I share some of the concerns that the leader outlined just now. I think that having a single unitary authority for the East of Lancashire, which is deprived, that horrifies me. Even just as a title, it horrifies me. But actually, when you think about the delivery of services within that authority, then it becomes really difficult, because at the moment we've got an awful lot that's delivered pan-Lancashire that we need to sort of break down into an East Lancashire delivery area. And so it's difficult to say without any detail. I think it's also difficult to pin our colours to any particular mast in a direction on this. Should there be 4, should there be 5? Who knows? We need more information, and so far it's not really forthcoming. But really, I mean, does it matter if we have a consultation, have a referendum? I think that Angela Rayner is hell bent on delivering this, no matter what. So to the people to people of Pendle, we may get a chance to speak in a consultation. People of Lancashire may get a chance to vote in a referendum. But at the end of the day, I think Angela Rayner and her team will do whatever they want. So I think it's almost a fruitless exercise, but please, we need more data.
Thank you. Just very briefly, Councillor Mahmood questions the cost. The government have actually allocated over £400,000 to the 15 authorities to work on submissions, and I think, the view of this authority is very clearly that the whole of the work that is necessary can be carried out within that cost envelope, and as long as all 15 councils agree to go forward on that basis, there isn't a cost implication for the council. I fully agree with Councillor Sutcliffe in terms of the data. What there is agreement across all 15 councils is that data collection, getting the evidence together, and then Councillor Sutcliffe says, does consultation matter? And I firmly believe that if we are not listening to our residents, then we are not reflecting what they want into whatever structure we have imposed upon us, because there will be a structure imposed upon us. But if people are very clearly of the view that proximity rather than a remote council is of paramount importance to them, then that needs to be weighed in the balance with all the other factors, the cost of operation, and so on, and so on, and so on. And if we don't ask the questions and have a robust evidence base in terms of public consultation, how on earth can we argue that point? Overall, I don't think local government reorganisation is a burning issue. I very much regret that it's even likely to be even less of a burning issue if we end up with an authority of 500,000 people, because folk will genuinely feel that they are irrelevant, and what impact, what effect can they have on the decisions that are being taken on their behalf. So I think it's of vital importance that these new structures, and we are going to get these new structures whether we like them or not, are best suited to local residents, effectively reflect what local residents want, and able to make decisions that work best for local residents. And I will champion that till my dying breath. So I hope there's unanimity across the chamber, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
We go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The next motion is make votes matter. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the last general election, 74% of the votes might as well have not been cast. That is how much the electoral system that this country, how what's the United Kingdom uses, it's what it does to the people who go out to the polls and make the effort of voting. It throws their votes away. How did it get 74%? It's the Make Votes Matters campaign, which I would encourage everyone here to sign up to and support. They're doing very good work in promoting good democracy. Mr. Mayor, that's 6 in 10 voices who, vote for an MP for their area and are not heard. And I think that's wrong. I therefore move that the Council notes the failure of the first past the post voting system to reflect the diverse nature of today's electorates and the outcome of elections. Council believes that a proportional representation electoral system should be introduced for all local and national government elections, and that the current proposed reorganisation of two-tier local government in England into unitary authorities is the perfect opportunity to introduce a proportional representation electoral system at the local government level. Therefore, Council resolves, and this is where I'll change one in front of the pink sheet because they have now some changes to the mayoral elections. I believe it's second choice. That the Chief Executive writes to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government on behalf of the Council to recommend that elections for the proposed unitary authorities use a single transferable vote proportional electoral system for multi-member divisions in the new unitary authorities. And the supplementary vote system for the election of the Lancashire Mayor and Police and Crime Commissioner. The Chief Executive also writes to our members of Parliament to the same effect. Mr. Mayor, this is an old chestnut of mine I bring up every year. I think it's well and truly time that we move past first past the post. We have one of the least elected governments in history, I would say. And it makes the turnout just so low as well. It's one of the least turned out elections too. And that is wrong. And this is a perfect opportunity in LGR to fix that. So I move.
Councillor.
Yes, I'd like to second this motion. I believe for a number of years that the current system is wrong. Whenever you discuss with people about going to vote, the number of people that now say, I'm not going to vote, there's no point, because my vote doesn't count. Well, at least these systems give people a chance to say exactly what they mean, exactly who they want to vote for, but their vote's not lost because they can then vote for the person who might be the second choice, but at least is not the person who really does not want to vote for. And I second this.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to offer a friendly amendment, and that's in the first paragraph of the resolution, where it says supplementary vote. I want to propose alternative vote. Mr. Mayor, the supplementary vote system is now being proposed by the government for mayoral elections, but that just gives people a first vote and then a second preference. The alternative voting system would give people the option to have preferences 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that it would elect somebody when they got to a 50%. I'm not going to go into the intricacies of it, but it is more proportional and would ensure that after 1 or 2 or 3 rounds of voting, that whoever was elected did command the support of 50% of the electorate. I found a fascinating fact, well, it fascinated to me anyway. The last government that was elected in Britain with a majority of over 50% of the electorate. Anybody care to guess when it was? It was the Liberal government elected in 1880. So you've got to go back, 150 years nearly, to get back to a government that was elected on over 50% of the vote, which I think just underlines the way in which the first past the post system undermines democracy. And of course, faced with local government reorganisation, faced with that disconnect between resident voters and the decision makers, it's absolutely crucial that we have a system that attempts to get that reconnect, as Councillor Land points out. But I'm moving a friendly amendment to substitute alternative for supplementary. Thank you.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Rowler-Whip for bringing this motion forward. And we have discussed these issues before, and for very many years, as a politics student and graduate and throughout, for many years and many decades, I supported first past the post because I do believe very strongly in the need for a direct link between the residents and the representative. And some proportional systems are grotesque and fail. They remove that link and they make representatives essentially a gift of party machinery. Now, luckily, these proportional systems proposed here do not do that. They maintain a clear link between residents and local representative in particular areas. And I think that you don't need to look very hard or very far to see that the democratic system in the UK is in trouble. We can't continue to ignore that either. We've seen turnout falling persistently. We now have a parliament that is perhaps the least representative parliament in our history. And we desperately need reform of the voting system, and I feel that now is the right time. This motion is a very timely motion, and it's a very sensible one, and I would urge everyone to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to the vote, Councillor Whip, do you want to say anything? Okay. All those in favour? Against? Abstention? Thank you. Next motion, driving test, moved by Councillor Strickland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Council notes that learner drives in Pendle and across the country are facing unacceptably long delays in securing driving test appointments, with average waiting times far exceeding the DVSA's target of 9 weeks. That this is causing significant distress and disruption to young people, students and apprentices, and those seeking employment who rely on obtaining a driving licence for work or education. Reports from the BBC and other media highlight that Nelson, Skipton and Stephen test centres are amongst the worst delays in the country, with some learners waiting over 6 months for a test slot.
A resident of Barnsley recently contacted me and spoke to me that she had taken a test at the first week in April in 2025 and had secured a retest following a failure at the end of September, feeling quite lucky that she got one in such a short time frame. The concerns have been raised in both the last and current parliaments by MPs of many parties who have challenged ministers on both long delays and the role of third-party booking services in worsening availability. That parliamentary questions have highlighted the government's limited action to address these issues and the lack of regulation or enforcement around third-party software tools that snap up appointments to resell them. This council believes that the government must take urgent action to bring down waiting times for practical driving tests and ensure fair access for all learners. That the practice of third-party softwares, companies, bulk booking and reselling test lots is exploited and undermines the integrity of the Driving Vehicle Service Association booking system. The local people, young people in Pendle, are being unfairly disadvantaged with consequences of education, employment and social mobility. The council therefore resolves to call on the government and the driving department of transport to publish a clear action to plan reduced waiting times for driving tests nationwide. Call for urgent reform of the DVSA's booking system to prevent third-party software from monopolising test appointments and to protect access for ordinary learners. Request that the Leader of the Council write to the Secretary of State for Transport and Pendle Members of Parliament, urging them to take immediate steps to resolve this growing crisis for our learning drivers and to promote awareness of this issue locally and support efforts by MPs and councillors to campaign for fair access for driving tests for everybody. Mr Mayor, I move.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the absence of Councillor Hartley, I would second it. There's a word that needs changing on page 9 where Pendle needs to be substituted in the first resolution at the end there. I just wanted to talk about the test touts that are profiteering from young people's misery, because the third-party booking system that this resolution refers to results in tests being sold to applicants, I think almost inevitably young people, for hundreds of pounds. And that in itself is an absolute disgrace. What further concerns me is the impact that this has on safety. I don't know, but I suspect that there will be more people driving around without having taken a test on their own, without supervision. And I think that given the very grave concerns we have about road safety here in Pendle, that it would be incumbent on us to get every last person through the test and have a safer experience for all. So I second Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Anwar.
Mr Mayor, I'm so glad that this motion has made it here today. My son's learning to drive, and when the instructor said it's time to actually book a practical now, I went through the calendar on the website and there was just nothing available. Next month, then I checked the next month, until I got to January 2026. Hang on, there was no slots then either. I stopped looking. I thought, January 2026, how far am I supposed to look? Anyway, the instructor said, oh, this happens all the time, like it should be the norm. He said, what you have to do is you have to download this app called Testy and just book anywhere in the country. I said, are you sure? All right, we'll pick Blackburn. That's close to us. And then I said, so what happens if we don't get a cancellation? Well, we'll have to do it in Blackburn. I was like, what? You should have told me that earlier before I did that. And then what happens is you get a notification which tells you when a cancellation is available. But as soon as you click on the app and go to the appointments, all the appointments have gone. So we've got one now for October, even though he's ready now for his test. So I've just done some number crunching and it's going to cost me £512 on lessons just to actually reach October, because if I stop doing the lessons, then that means he's going to be a bit rusty and probably fail his test. So the whole system is an absolute mockery, and I got quite excited actually when I got an email from DVSA saying that, you know, we're looking into all these problems as Councillor Strickland mentioned today, and I filled in the survey, picked whatever options I thought were good, and then I said to the instructor, I'm really glad that email came through. He goes, oh, don't get your hopes up, they do this every year. So even though we have put this motion in, and I absolutely support it, I just feel like it's going to fall on deaf ears, like a lot of things do. But it's such a serious issue because, especially like I said, in deprived areas where youngsters are learning to drive, it's costing them an arm and a leg, and they simply can't afford it. So I support it.
All those in favour of this motion? Against? Next motion, Martin's Law, moved by Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like the Council to know that on the 3rd of April 2025, Martin's Law gained royal assent. It has been officially titled the Terrorism Protection and Offences Act of 2025. Martin's Law aims to improve public safety by requiring venues, including outside spaces, to consider and prepare for the threat from terrorism. Such venues include community centres, sports grounds, town halls, schools, street markets, temporary events, places of worship and civic offices. Venues with a capacity of 200 to 799 people will be required to conduct basic terrorism risk assessments, identify protective measures and implement plans to secure the premises during an incident. Venues with a capacity of over 800 must undertake rigorous risk assessments, monitor CCTV and create a detailed security and response plan. This government has outlined a 2-year implementation period before the law becomes sanctionable to allow venues and organisations time to prepare. However, this time frame will be seriously reduced if the terrorist risk increases. Therefore, venues need to be ready. This Council believes that, whilst measures must be taken to improve public safety, the cost and administrative implications for event organisers and the Council is going to be insignificant. The requirements for this new legislation may be disproportionately challenging for local organisers such as charities and organisations, especially those who hold ad hoc events or annual fundraisers. Events such as Collins Blues Festival and Gala, Bon Aldrich, Bands on the Square and similar events throughout Pendle will be significantly affected. Furthermore, the practical and financial implications on parish and town councils, small and medium-sized businesses and community groups operating on limited budgets should be acknowledged. This Council resolves to ask the Executive to brief councillors and parish and town councils on the upcoming legal requirements and the impact of Martin's Law will have. Prepare an impact assessment on how Martin's Law will affect venues managed or operated by Pendle Borough Council. Engage with parish and town councils, local businesses, community groups, Colne-based, and voluntary organisations to gather feedback on potential challenges and resource requirements, and use appropriate communication channels to raise public awareness of Martin's Law and share support available to assist affected organisations to comply with the new legal requirements. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lord. Yeah. All those in favour? Against? Sorry. Next motion, human rights, to be moved by Councillor Church.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Considering everything that we have heard previously on the agenda tonight, I am standing now alongside many, many heartfelt words about the worst breaches of human rights around the world. So I will not go through this entire entity. I am also aware of the time. I would just like to bring your attention to one little matter that's rather nearer to home. We all know approximately what the European Convention of Human Rights is about. It is the most fundamental framework of common decency and behaviour towards each other. And in asking that the Council resolves to foster a culture of freedom and expression in Pendle and to review our engagement and consultation policies to be as open and transparent as possible, but we write to the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice to express Council's support for the ECHR, I beg your pardon, and the protection it gives our fundamental freedoms. The matter of this being now nearer home, we must note, as we have, the ECHR has come under attack from certain political parties recently, including Reform UK, who plan to remove the United Kingdom from the ECHR in their 2024 general election manifesto. I only need to conclude by pointing out what I believe is also glaringly obvious. The only reason that anybody would want to opt out of such a comprehensive legal framework is that they intend to trample upon it. I will. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to second this motion that we've had this framework for a long time, and to start meddling with it and start changing it, it's going to cause a lot of problems that I can see. I will second this motion wholeheartedly.
Any more speakers? Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a difficult motion because, of course, we have been discussing earlier this evening about some quite profound restrictions on freedom of expression. And all of those restrictions have occurred whilst we have been signatories to the ECHR. So I wonder whether the ECHR is everything that it's cracked up to be, because certainly there are issues with it. We have seen in this country very loosely defined hate speech laws, which have been, on some occasions, absolutely justified, but on other occasions they're almost used as a weapon to shut down free speech and freedom of expression. We have also in the UK a category of incidents called non-crime hate incidents, which are investigated by the police. They are not crimes, but they are subject to police investigation. This is where someone says something offensive. Someone doesn't like something. Well, Mr Mayor, there seems to me an issue here, that if we get into a situation where if someone doesn't like something someone said, they can report it to the police, and the police have to take this seriously and investigate. And in some cases, the alleged perpetrator's name of this non-crime is recorded on police records. So I absolutely understand the intention behind the motion, which I know is brought in good spirit and were very well-meaning. But I have some reservations about how well the ECHR is protecting freedom of expression.
Okay, All those in favour of this motion? Against? Thank you very much, Council. Have a good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give service to Bush, Member Kendall, Councillor Hamid Camel.
No.